Welcome to Spirit Outspoken, where we dive deep into the realms of spirituality, healing, and the beautiful chaos we call life.
From ancient traditions to modern practices, we are going to explore it all. Whether you're a newbie or a seasoned seeker, you're guaranteed to find something that inspires, challenges, and intrigues you here.
So grab your favorite beverage, find a cozy spot to curl up, and join us for Spirit Outspoken. Hello and welcome to another episode of Spirit Outspoken. Today, we are so excited to start building upon what we talked about in episode 1 this season, which is the fact that our emotions have power and frequency, right? We talk about high vibration, low vibration, and today we're really going to dive into that a little bit further as we discuss a book called Power versus Force. So, Jasa, you're the one who brought this book to the table. Why don't you tee it up and explain to everybody what this book is about?
Yes, I can do that. So I read this book a while ago, and it was, I can't remember the documentary, but it was all about how our emotions can shape our reality and that there's an associated vibrational frequency with all things, not just emotions, but all things. And the concept is that we're energetic beings. And if you magnified us 10 million times, you would see that we're just a bunch of little bouncing energy balls, right?
Right.
So this concept that emotions have frequency, emotions can shape our reality has always been something that's really fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And this book came up as a way to explain why that is, and also proving that emotions, both good and bad, have different associated vibrational frequency or energetic states.
Yes.
So based on that, they can influence things in different ways. So yes, the book is Power versus Force, and it's by Dr. David Hawkins. He's an MD and has a PhD, and he was the director of the Institute for Spiritual Research, and he's remained widely known in the spiritual world even after his death. He passed away in 2012, and he wrote and taught from the unique perspective of a scientist, a clinician, a teacher, and he was a life member of the American Psychiatric Association and had 50 years of clinical experience. So this guy, is legit, you guys. Like, PhD, MD, had clinical experience working with patients, and he talks about how he leveraged this concept of different vibrational frequencies to different emotional states and pursuing those higher emotional states based on the power that they can have in your life. Even beyond his credibility of a doctor, clinician, somebody that spent years and decades researching spirituality in the clinical space, he had personal experiences that actually drove him to pursue this.
Oh, so what were those?
Yes. So when he was a child, he had a near-death experience. He had a paper route and he was stuck in a snowstorm and he couldn't find his way out. And he eventually couldn't see where he was going and just found himself on the side of the road. As some time had passed, and he just recalled feeling this immense peace wash over him. The freezing that was causing pain in his limbs just dissipated, and he described what was a near-death experience. And as he was drifting out of his body, he felt something on his knee, and he realized it was his dad, and his dad had found him, and his dad was absolutely panicked, and he felt himself call himself back into his body to be there for his dad, even though he really wanted to go and follow this incredible peaceful energy. And at the time, he shared that there was nothing that described this experience. People hadn't shared spiritual experiences like that. He had never heard of a near-death experience. So he just shrugged it off and kept it to himself.
Yeah.
And actually later on in life, he had said, it wasn't that he was agnostic, but he didn't necessarily connect with the religions that were communicated. He was like, this isn't really it. I experienced something very different. I didn't experience judgment. I didn't experience that. It was just pure blissful love. So he was like, I don't really know what to connect with. He had this experience. And then he's like, well, I don't know if I believe in this God that people are telling me about? What does
Sure.
this mean for me?
Yeah.
Later on in life, he actually had a life-threatening diagnosis, and
Oh,
he
wow.
basically was on his deathbed. He's 38 years old, and he called out to God, and he said, if there is a God, help me now. And he felt this immense peace wash over him, and it was very similar to that experience that he had as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And right away he realized, like, okay, this is real. This is God. And it completely transformed his life and the way in which he practiced. And he realized that bringing love and the clinical space, bringing peace and acceptance, transformed people's physical ailments. And it was something that was so powerful for him that he had the realization that we are not our personalities.
Yeah.
We are not our ego.
Mm-hmm.
We are not what is forcing our way through life. And that's what led to his lifelong journey and study and application of understanding how love and peace can change and transform the sickest of sick.
Oh my gosh.
I
That's
know.
amazing.
It's absolutely amazing. So the author had some really unique experiences that really led him to this powerful research,
Sure.
clinical studies to really help understand what are some of these really higher states of enlightenment or energy frequency, and to really just see how the clinical application would affect his patients with this knowledge.
Yeah. And it's one of our favorite things here, right? The combination of science and spirituality coming together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Let's dive into what Dr. Hawkins really means
Yeah.
about power
Oh my
versus
gosh,
force.
this is going to be so good.
This is going to be so good.
Yes.
Right? So the whole premise is power versus force. And the concept really being that power is more associated to those higher based emotions like love and enlightenment, and force is really driven from things like shame, guilt, fear. And we're going to talk about that, but that's basically the main idea. So here's the basic idea. So Hawkins says that every emotion we feel has a different level of energy. Some emotions are low vibration, like fear, guilt, anger. These emotions are what he calls force. You know those moments when you feel like you're pushing your way through life? That's the energy of force. It's draining. It's exhausting. We referred to that in the last episode, right? Of like
Upstream.
making things
Yes.
happen, right? And really the concept that is you're making things happen because it's coming from a place of ego-based actions. Those are the things like control, manipulation, aggression. You're forcing it.
Yeah. And then power, on the other hand, he describes as effortless, right? This is something that comes from within. It's aligned with our higher truth and love. You could call it also soul or God or higher
Yes.
consciousness, this downstream that we were talking about in our previous episode. And this isn't about control. It's about influence or inspiration and living in alignment with who you really are. And one thing I love that he says is that power doesn't have to push, it attracts.
Ooh.
And therein lies the distinction, right? There is still effort being initiated. There is still action taking place, but the whole energy behind it is completely different.
I think that's so key. You don't have to push. You don't have to make it happen. You can attract. And
Yes.
it's the same concept, right? You just said it, that this power isn't about control. It's about influence, inspiration, and living in alignment with who you really are.
Yes.
So getting into alignment, matching that vibrational frequency to what your purpose here, or what your soul has desired for you, right?
Yeah.
So guys, this is like very similar to what we talked about in episode 1.
Absolutely.
So what's really interesting and where we take it to the next level is that he talks about how our emotions affect not just how we feel, but how our emotions shape our reality. For instance, if you're in a bad mood, like if you wake up and you stub your toe, or like that concept, like I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, it's like shit just keeps happening.
It's true.
It,
Yeah.
you know,
It
like
just snowballs.
it all snowballs. Like you brush your teeth and you're like, oh, your kid comes in, they're like, I just puked. And you're like, oh my God, right? Like, and then you start to spiral, and then, you know, you get into your car and it's not working, right? Like, obviously I'm being a little bit dramatic, right? But you know those times when you feel this negative energy build
Mhm.
and you're just waiting for the next crazy thing to happen,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
We've all been there. So on the flip side, have you noticed that when you're in a state of gratitude and love, things just start working out better for you. That parking spot is just open for you in the front of the store. You get that good news you've been waiting on. A bad situation that's been hanging over your head all of a sudden just resolves itself, right?
Yeah.
We've had those moments too. And listen, like, we're not saying that everything is going to be negative all the time or positive all the time, but it is worth noting that when you're in those moments of positivity, things are going well, it seems like it builds.
Yes.
And just as negativity builds, so can positivity, right?
Absolutely. That reminds me, when we think about people who we say are just lucky, like, oh, there's people who, I don't know, it just always works out for them. And it's like, well, maybe they're really aligned with their positive emotions, right? And they're drawing and attracting that to them.
Yeah, like the lucky people, pay attention, you guys. They're usually the happy people that are flowing through life.
Yeah, it's true.
It's true. All right.
So what's really fascinating is that Dr. Hawkins backs up all of these ideas in his book with a mix of scientific concepts and experimental evidence. So he really focused on how energy and consciousness influence our reality, which we've already talked about. So now let's start to really unwind how he did this. So he's going through and he wants to prove this in a scientific manner. What are the tools and resources and research he did to actually prove that this is legit?
Yep.
So the first way he started was through muscle testing, which is also known as kinesiology. And this was one of the primary methods he used to support his idea. And he explains that our bodies have this innate response to truth and also to falsehood. And he said that this could be measured through muscle strength. So in his experiments, he noticed that people's muscles became stronger when they were exposed to truthful statements or high energy emotions like love or peace. And then their muscles became weaker when exposed to falsehoods or lower energy emotions like anger or fear. So he argues that this physical reaction is evidence that higher emotions actually align us with health and lower emotions drain our energy.
Yeah. And he also talked about, too, that you could leverage this for a simple yes or no question. It's your body has an innate ability to tell you what you should or shouldn't do. And I thought this was nuts. Honestly, like we're talking mostly about like the emotional states and how he did the muscle testing to basically align different, frequencies or power with different emotions on this scale. But he also talks about how you can leverage this methodology to help you with life questions and decisions. Like, should I take this job? And like basically what you would do is like your arm is out at a 90-degree angle. And the person testing would use two fingers at the end. And based on your response, you say, should I take this job? And if you say yes and your arm stays firm, that's an affirmative.
Okay.
And if your arm goes down, it's a no.
Well, this is similar to, I've heard people using muscle testing for food allergies or sensitivities. Is it the same thing? Like our body knows.
Same no. Your energetic field knows. Your soul knows. Your soul knows. That's what it is.
So interesting.
It's really interesting. And like, I literally have goosebumps. This stuff like gets me so amped up, you guys. Like, I'm obsessed. In addition to answering yes or no questions, an example of one of the things that he would do is say, imagine holding a truthful statement like love is the most powerful force. Right? Mm-hmm. And now, while somebody applies pressure to your arm, he would test if your arm would resist that. So very similar to the yes or no.
Yeah.
So this is how he would start to build on the different emotions.
There's one really interesting aspect of his work, and he made this scale of consciousness, which basically ranks the various emotional states based on their vibrational frequency. So the way this works is at the bottom, we find the heavier, more dense emotions like shame and guilt. And those are the low energy ones that we talked about earlier. And those are the ones that can really feel suffocating and heavy. And then as you move up the scale, you start to encounter emotions like courage, acceptance, and love. And those are in the higher vibrational states that actually empower us and allow us to experience life more fully.
Yeah. So basically the science behind this comes from the concept that everything in the universe, including emotions, have a measurable vibrational frequency. Higher frequency emotions produce coherence and harmony in the body, which can be scientifically measured using tools like EEGs or heart rate variability monitors. Lower frequency emotions create disorder and stress in the body, leading to health issues. Is this nuts?
It's so cool when you start taking all these separate little pieces, right?
Yes.
Of research done here and research done there. So just when we're talking about building health in the body, go back to season 1 of Love when we were talking about all the chemical and physiological reactions that take place in our body when we experience love, when we reflect on love, when we connect with other people, right?
That's exactly right.
Up with everything he's saying here.
Yeah, and love is one of the highest vibrational frequencies that we can attain. So we saw the absolute physiological impact and emotional impact by leveraging that emotion in a powerful way.
Just to build on that a little bit further, there's actually growing evidence in neuroscience and psychology about how emotions affect our body. And some of those studies show that prolonged negative emotions like anger and stress can lead to increased cortisol levels, heart disease, and a weakened immune system, which we've talked about previously,
Yes.
right? When we were talking about love and the importance of love. Because on the flip side, positive emotions like gratitude and love have been shown to improve heart health, boost immunity, and increase longevity. So this is not the first time we're seeing this, folks. Like, this is all coming full circle again and reiterating what we started to build on in season 1.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So diving into this scale of consciousness, like this is the central concept of power versus force. So he measures all of these different levels of human consciousness, and like this is also known as emotions, on a scale from 0 to 1,000. So for example, shame, which is the lowest vibrational frequency, that's characterized by humiliation and a sense of worthlessness. That's at a 20. Okay.
Yep.
So we'll just like kind of move up. Fear. Fear is a common one. That's dominated by anxiety and worry. That's at 100.
Okay.
All right. We keep going up. Anger. That's at 150. That's characterized by frustration and aggression, right? Those emotions. So now if we talk about pride, that's just a little bit above anger. That's at 175. And that involves arrogance and denial, which is really interesting. So one thing that I think is really cool is that courage, right? That's where you think like positive energy begins. That's marked by empowerment and determination. That's at 200.
Okay.
But neutrality, and we've talked about neutrality a lot, actually clocks in at 250. That's a higher based emotion than courage. So when we talk about the last episode, where we were saying like, I'm going to beat this, I'm going to get over this, right? That's courage.
Yeah.
That's at 200, which isn't that high. Neutrality, which is just like, okay, like I'm surrendering. This isn't awesome, but like
it is what it is.
It is what it is, and we're going to navigate this. That's at 250. And you know why? Because that's characterized by flexibility and non-judgment.
Yeah.
You're not judging your circumstances. You're not asking the rock in the river, why are you here? And what are you doing? You're just flowing around it.
Accepting what is.
It's just there.
Yeah.
So we keep working up this scale. Acceptance is at 350. That's marked by forgiveness and harmony. And then you keep working your way up. Love, for example, that's at 500.
Oh my gosh. Well, what's 1,000?
Well, we're going to get there,
oh
baby.
Gosh,
we're going to get there.
Excited.
Where's impatience? Where's impatience on the scale?
That's where I'm
at. So love. Love is 500. And that involves unconditional love and reverence. And that's the spiritual love. And if you read in Power versus Force, and he goes into depth about each one of these vibrational states and like what that really means, he explains it in a really moving way. And like, listen, like this author is verbose. You know, I like to say like he's verbose, but he has a really eloquent way of describing these different states. So I encourage you to read for yourself. But the thing that was cool about love is he really talked about it in the concept of agape, right? That unconditional, loving, spiritual kindness type of love, right?
Okay.
So that's at 500. Now, peace, which is marked by the emotions of bliss and serenity, that's at 600. Okay.
That's interesting to me.
Peace is above.
That peace is above love.
Love. Yeah. I know. And I almost wonder, like, maybe that's because, and like, this is just a theory. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But maybe that's because peace is not doing anything.
Yeah.
It's just being. Where love, you're still like taking some sort of action. You're still, there's an output.
There's an effort.
There's an output. Yes. And like, it's a good effort. It's
Yeah.
not a bad, it feels good to love. But peace is sort of the difference between like, I don't know, I'm just thinking about this as the way that he categorizes this.
Yeah.
The acting on something versus attracting.
True.
Peace
Yes.
feels more like an
Power
attracting
versus
energy,
Back
right?
to that. Yes. Yep.
So
That makes sense.
then you get to the highest level, and he clocks us in at 700 to 1,000. I don't know why there's such a big range, but it is what it is. The highest levels is characterized by pure consciousness and unity.
Okay.
That is like when you are aligned and connected to the energy of God. That's enlightenment. Okay. So anyhow, that is the scale that he created. And it really allows for a nuanced understanding of the vast range of emotions. And I think this is what's cool. It's like an understanding too that courage has a lower emotional frequency than neutrality.
Yeah.
And that one was for me, I was like, whoa, understanding the details there.
Back to like it's so countercultural.
Yep.
Courage in our culture is very much encouraged. Right?
Yes.
I mean, it is I would say it's a value on a country that was built by immigrants.
Yep.
It is valued here. Right?
Oh my
People
gosh.
willing to take the risk, willing to, go out and do these very brave things. So for us to hear like it's actually on the lower end of the vibrational scale, it kind of takes us back a little bit because it is a little bit different than what we've been taught.
It does. And it highlights the importance of, again, like co-creating with power
versus
forcing on your own. And when you co-create with the energies of the universe, when you co-create with your soul, when you co-create with God, you're attracting, and there's an ease to that because you're matching that emotional frequency.
Yeah.
And man, like this hits me really hard. And this is somebody, like we were talking about how I have like an overactive solar plexus. Solar plexus is very much like self-assured, confidence. I can do this. And all the way up to your crown chakra, which is, your connection to the higher frequencies. And I've had to realize that I have created so many problems for myself and so much angst by thinking that I have to fight these fights by myself instead of allowing and being and flowing and trusting and reaching that place of flow and neutrality where I'm taming that part of my instincts down, which is I no longer have to force and make things happen. We can allow and let it happen because that is already what's intended for us.
I think it's so interesting because I think all of us can think of areas in our life where we are prone to forcing. For me, I was just reflecting when you were saying that I struggled for a long time with perfectionism. Okay. And so I would tweak things, like, me, I like to be creative and I like to do different things. And so I would tweak and tweak and tweak and tweak, and it was never quite good enough.
Yep.
And it brought this element, like when previous episode, when we were talking about just create for the joy of creating, instead of just like creating something and putting it out there because it makes me happy, it was more about, I need to make this perfect before I can share it with the world. And it became a forced situation. Does that make sense? I'm now trying to make sure that this looks right. And I'm zapping the joy that comes from just the creation of it.
And how draining was that for you?
Exhausting. I can't tell you how freeing it has been since I've been able to let go of some of that. Of just like,
oh, it feels so good. It's peace.
Yes.
Yes.
It's starting to make sense to me. Like, oh yeah, I'm moving up the vibrational scale.
Let's talk about that. So like,
yeah, do they have something like that?
Well, I'm just wondering.
Over analyzing or perfecting, or what would that be?
Well, let's like dig into this. Like what would you feel if things weren't perfect?
It was an underlying fear, I think, of judgment.
Okay, so you're
like
wondering...
if I put something out into the world, I think that's what it is more than anything. Right? Like I'm afraid of what other people will think of that. Why else would it have to be perfect?
And I think we go even deeper. If somebody is judging you, that creates shame.
Yes.
Makes you feel like you're not good enough.
Yes.
I'm not worthy enough. I'm not enough.
Oh, yeah.
And I think like that's the lowest level of frequency.
It's the shame.
It's the shame. And it's characterized by humiliation and a sense of worthlessness. And I'm not saying that you are feeling that in the moment, but that's the underlying thing that you're trying to prevent.
Yeah.
And I feel like I connect with this because I too have dealt with like perfection. I say that I'm a recovering perfectionist.
Yeah. Yeah,
I honestly like sometimes in the corporate world, I'll talk about that. I'll be like, I'm sorry, I'm a recovering perfectionist because I realize it sucks the energy out of the room, not only for me, but the people around me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's a self-imposed stressor that if you can release that, you can start moving up to a higher vibrational feeling like acceptance.
Yeah.
I'm accepting I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
And I'm not always going to be perfect.
Yeah.
So sue me.
Sue me, Sally.
Sue me, Sally. But acceptance, I want to look at this. I think acceptance is one.
It's got to be.
Or by you releasing the perfectionism, you're getting to a higher state of acceptance. And that's at 350. And that's marked by forgiveness and harmony.
All right.
We nailed it.
We
nailed it. Okay, the other thing that's really interesting and what we'll talk about is the concept of quantum physics and the observer effect.
Here we go.
Okay, so Hawkins also draws on the concept that the observer influences the observed. And they've done these studies. And in quantum theory, particles behave differently when they're being measured or watched. This is fascinating.
I think this is so crazy and wild. If you haven't
seen documentaries on this, you guys really need to dig into it. And we'll talk about, we'll probably do a full season on this.
Yeah.
But they behave differently. And it suggests that consciousness affects reality. Just us putting our intention that we are watching something affects how energetic particles behave. So now that we've drawn the other theory that everything is a vibrational frequency, the higher our consciousness is, the higher our emotional state, the higher our emotional vibrational frequency is, the more positively we will impact the world around us, both physically and energetically.
We need to do a season on this because there is a study. There's multiple studies, but one that always comes to mind for me is there was a study done where, have you heard about this one, where there were nuns that went into inner cities and they meditated? And simply by meditating in these areas that were prone to violence and poverty and all these horrible things, the rates of those things started to diminish over time.
Oh my gosh. You guys.
It's crazy.
Just imagine.
I wish I could cite what that was. I'll find it.
We'll find it.
Yeah.
Imagine if like globally or a city gets to a point where we understand how powerful our intention, our emotions, our consciousness is to our collective well-being. We are all connected. I mean, that stuff just gets me. I
love it.
That just gets me. All right. So we've really talked about how emotions shape our lives. We talked about why it's so important to pay attention to our emotions and to really, I want to say almost like take ownership.
Well, I was just going to say,
our
leverage
emotions.
them.
Yes.
To benefit, like you said, not only us, but the people around us.
Yes, that's exactly right. Our own emotions affect our inner states and outer states. And we're learning from Hawkins specifically on why this is and how specific emotions have different energetic frequencies and how we can use them in our favor. So the whole point is, if you feel like you're from a place of negative emotions, you're feeling anxiety, you're feeling stressed, you are forcing your way through life. And that just sucks the ever-loving life and life force out of you.
Yeah.
Okay. If you are getting to a higher emotional frequency, and this is a little bit different than the first episode where it was more about flow and letting go of the oars, he kind of takes it from the different perspective that when we are at these higher emotional states, it's powerful. And so powerful, I think, insinuates something a little bit different than flow. But you said something that was really interesting in the first episode, that you can either add to the flow of the water or you can detract from it. So you're adding power to the stream. You're adding power to the river.
Yeah.
Just because you're floating downstream doesn't mean that you're not able to fuel that in a really beautiful, positive way. And I liked having the different lens of what does flow look like and what does power look like? And I think forcing in both instances is upstream.
Yep.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Rach, do you want to talk about how we're going to incorporate this in a helpful guide for home?
Yeah. So what we're going to do this week is pretty straightforward. We are actually going to post this guide. So you can print it out, you can put it somewhere where you can see it. So for you to start understanding, again, we identify the emotion and then we work towards something better. So you can start seeing in real time where you are on the scale. I just think that could be really helpful for people. So log in, we'll make it cute and pretty. You can print it out and put it someplace and just keep tabs on that.
I absolutely love that. I think that's so great. Thank you so much for listening today. And if you haven't yet, we would love for you to give us a review or leave a comment. That really helps me and Rach extend the reach of Spirit Outspoken. And listen, we really want to get to the point where collectively we understand how powerful our love, our peace can be for the greater good. And in a time where things feel unsettled, when things feel like there's division within us, we need more of that. So spread the good word, people. We love you.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode. If you're ready to take your spirituality to the next level, be sure to check out our website, spiritoutspoken.com. There you can download free educational resources, read our latest blog posts, and join the Spirit Outspoken community.
And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Spirit Outspoken to stay up to date on news, happenings, shenanigans, and all things Spirit Outspoken.